got the 16mm Maxitrak Accucraft Baldwin and thought we'd do a kit build, putting the model together step by step so you know what you're doing if you've got one. It's a relatively easy kit to put together, but there are bits that need a little bit of fettling and fixing and fitting. So starting with the main chassis and the buffer beams, and then we've got bogie parts and then all the other details that go on. I think actually what we will do is start with the bogies. There's no point in starting the chassis until we've got all the bogies and wheel sets together. So we'll get into this. These are ended. You can see on the plates themselves. You've got a hole here, which is for the motor. And then on the wheel bracket, you have a hole for the motor end. And then the adjuster end is adjusted on 3 bolts. Now, when you build these bogie plates, you build them in opposite directions because you want a motor to go through the hole in one chassis and then a motor to go through the hole in the other. So you actually build them as an opposite pair. But I've got one bogie that's already built. I'm going to put the other one together and hopefully we can show you the process of how it goes. So the first bogie, we've got axles, E-clips, we've got the wheels, 2 with the sprockets on the back, 2 plain, and we're going to nut and bolt all that together first. You've got to be, you don't have to do it this way. You can actually build the bogies with the chain drives and sprockets on the other sides if you want to, but I like them all in a row. So if you take your time and look at how they all go together, you have to find it a bit easier if everything's straight. So the wheel brackets have got this shape to them, and you're building 2 wheel brackets in one direction and then the other wheel brackets in the other direction, and that way all of your sprockets will stay the same. So the wheel brackets themselves are nice and simple, remembering of course the motor one with the hole. And here's your stainless axle with your E-clip. I've already clipped one E-clip onto one end. So onto this we need to put our first wheel, and then we do the sprocket.
Bevel gear.
Thank you, bevel gear. And then the second wheel with a sprocket on it. Because of the powder coating, you get a little bit of a clearance issue with these bearings. You just give them a little bit of a file to get rid of the powder. And then your bearings pop into these, nice and simple.
And you've got to put the axle through the other hole.
Yeah, so I'm going to get the axle through the hole and pop it back onto the bearing. And I needed my other bearing on there, so I would just do that again quick. Put your bearing on, through the hole, into the bearing, then slide this bearing into position. And you can't see it very well, but on these axles a tiny little groove. And that groove there is for your E-clip. So once you've got that positioned, you can pop that E-clip into the groove. And if you want to, they're quite tough, these little E-clips. Push them on with a pair of pliers, or you can push them on with the end of a screwdriver. That clips in. I'll leave all of this loose because all of this does need adjusting. That's our first motor version. I'll go ahead and I'll build the second wheel set, and then we'll put the motors on when we put it together. Okay, so I've got my wheel set ready, both my wheel sets. You've got to remember which way around the cutouts are on them, so that we're getting them opposite to the other side. So we're doing it in opposite. the way that I found actually fitting this up, I bolt the first bolt on to hold this rear wheel bracket in position. Holds it nice and steady. Keep dropping those little nuts. There we go. That stops it moving. Now this wheel bracket with a motor on it actually stays solid. All of your adjustment on your chain is going to be on the front one. So the motor has holes in it and it has a sticker on the front. If you look at the orientation of that motor using that lug and you keep it absolutely straight, those holes line up inside. You've got to remember to get your bevel gear on, so we just pop the bevel on, pop the motor in on the frame, get it about straight, and then these bolts are a little bit tricky, but you can glue these to your screwdriver if you want to. I find just holding it gives you a little bit of option of moving them about, but pop them into the holes. About there. You should just be able to screw that up. Before I do it up too tight, I'll get the second one in as well. So make sure you've got a bit of clearance on the old bevel. You should be able to do them up nice and tight. This does two things. It holds the motor solidly, but it also holds that wheel bracket solid as well. So you can just tighten this one up and make it nice and solid. And that is going nowhere. Everything else is still loose, mind you. I haven't set up the bevels or the wheels. We'll put the other wheel set on the front, making sure we keep the brackets the same way. So I've got this into position. That's all your adjustment. I haven't done this one up tight. What we're going to do is set everything up. So you're going to need an Allen key at this point. You've got to set your bevel gears on the motor on this rear axle. And what I try to do is get the Allen keys in the same position so you can do them up and undo them. Now it's important to keep this bevel over enough to get your 32mm on the back to back of the wheels. It's quite easy in the 45mm, but with 32 this is really quite tight. So what I do is just get that bevel as close as I can, the wheel up against it, and I'll give them a little pinch up with the Allen key. Now obviously the wheels are still loose, so I can't turn this axle to try it yet, but if I manoeuvre my wheel round, you've got your little 3mm Allen key inside the wheel. Screw that into position, then that axle goes tight. You can just see that motor moving okay. That feels alright to me, there's no graunching, no worries. The next step is to set your back to back on your sprocket. So we've got that at 28mm on your back to back. Get it to about 28mm. You can just pinch the grub screw up in this wheel and then measure it again. Actually, I'm pretty good. I'll just tighten that into position. And that's your setting for your 32mm. You can see the bevel gear is close to the sprocket, but it doesn't touch it, and that chain will run over the top. So I'll get straight edge, and I'll set the front ones according to that as well. The front ones aren't so important, but you still want to get the back-to-back correct. A straight edge will give me this one. You can actually look at it and that will tell you how close they are as well. And then we'll do the same again. 28mm, roughly about there. Pinch it up on the grub screw. I can see my adjustment isn't all that straight. I think I'm going to just bring it over a little bit and get that adjusted. You have got leeway with the chain, but it's nice to get it as straight as you possibly can. So I'll re-straighten that and then we can put the chain on. Yeah, so I can check that this bevel and everything's moving okay. I've got my back-to-back set. No adjustment is done on the chain yet. The chain comes pre-cut to you, so we can put that on. So here's your link. First thing you do is slide it through the end of the chain. I'm going to pull that up, pop that into position. Your chain's still nice and floppy. And don't forget this bit. This is easily missed when it comes out of the bag. That goes on. And then the last thing for you to do is put the clip on to hold it all in place. And these are a little bit fiddly as well, but the way I do it is these clips, they can go halfway down the clip onto your first pin. Turn it to go towards the second pin. Push it along till it's just about in place. And then with a flat-ended screwdriver, just push the end of that clip. And you see I'm pushing it down with my thumb. You heard it go click. That is that chain in position. That's not going to fall off. So your chain's there. Last thing for you to do, just the slack out of it. And that's nice and simple for 2 bolts. Not quite so simple for the third, but if you put a bit of pressure on that front axle, you'll tension that chain. Ooh. So you can tension the first 2 bolts, which are easy to get to. You can see my wheel set is slightly twisted. You don't want that. So before you do the third one up, make sure it's nice and straight. And then what I'll do is I'll get in there with a little BA spanner. And obviously I've got the Phillips head on this side here. Cheers. There we go. That is a nice solid chain on a working wheel set. So, I'm happy with that. You want everything to be as nice and straight as you can. And the very last thing for us to do is just add the detailing. So the detailing on the bogies, there's 2 different types of detail. You can see that the front one has 2 sandboxes. And the rear one has a single sandbox and a flat box. And the reason for that is when we put the chassis together, this gives you the clearance to get your
Off the back steps.
Yeah, the back steps cover this edge, so nothing on the back. So for the majority of the sandboxes where they screw through, you're using the 6mm self-tapper to screw straight in. But the thin one, be careful you only use the 3.5. That's much shorter and it won't come through the casting. And these are nice and simple. You've got holes on the back of the 3D printed casting here, and you've got holes in the bogey sides. So I actually screw the screw through the hole first. Then you can line it up with a hole in the back of the casting, and you can finish off, just tighten that into position. If you use the right screw, you won't come through at all. Same for the other end with the longer self-tapper. This is a 6mm one to go into the thicker sandbox. Okay, these are sided. You can see you've got the brake pistons on there, so just make sure you get the right ones on the right side. The motor's going to be at the rear, the steps are at the rear, that's where you need your clearance. I'll screw these on too. Excellent, there's our bogie complete. So before I actually put it onto the chassis, I'll go around and I'll just oil all of these bearing parts, because everything that's moving is going to need oiling, and it's a good opportunity now while it's in my hands. And I will also go around and just do up every Allen key, make sure everything's nice and tight. And if you look carefully, this is very, very carefully designed. The orientation of the Allen key on this goes down past the thin part of the chain, so you can get in there and just give that a little tweak. Also, if you want to gauge convert, that's how you'll be doing it. Don't forget the bevels. Everything's nice and tight.
You could test run that now, couldn't you?
Yeah, just put a battery on it if you wanted to, and that will work. But also, don't forget to spot a little bit of oil on things, because it just makes it much easier than doing it later when it's together. Okay. So mounting the bogies is relatively easy on the chassis. We've got two little spacers. And I add grease to the bottom of the chassis and we'll screw those together. But the next step is to put the chassis together.